Hello everyone, and welcome back to Beer versus Beer. Today I want to do a comparison of two lagers from the same brewery. One is the Augustiner-Helles, and the other is the Augustiner Edelstoff, which is a Dortmunder Exportbier. I've had both of them in the past, and I liked both of them. I tried the Edelstoff first, and really loved it. I got a six-pack of it at my local bottle shop and couldn't believe how much I loved it. You know, I like a good lager. There's nothing wrong with lagers. Some people don't like them. Sometimes a good lager is just all you need for refreshing, especially if it's like a hot summer day, crisp, refreshing, easy drinking, sessionable, all that good jazz. And sometimes it just hits the spot. And I've heard it said that a lot of brewers, after a while, when they're finally off work and they're going to, do their own drinking after work, a lot of times they just end up getting lagers. So, as you can see, they look very similar. There's no way I could tell a difference between the two. A little bit more head on the Edelstoff, but could be because I poured it last, and it could be how I poured it. I did pour them down the side and not just straight. Sometimes I actually do pour more briskly, because I do like to have a good head form on the top. But anyway, I wanted to compare them side by side because I remember I loved the Edelstoff, and then I finally went and tried the Lagerbier Hell, and I liked it too. But I got a six-pack of the Lagerbier Hell, and for some reason, every time I had it, it tasted a little different. Like, it wasn't what I remembered from the previous time. It was still good, but sometimes better than others, and I know a lot of that can have to do with what you ate already and all that stuff, but it didn't, enough said. It wasn't exactly the same each time. Sometimes it tasted closer to what I remembered of the Edelstoff, and sometimes it tasted different. And I apologize, these are Sierra Nevada glasses. Me and my wife went there recently to tour their location in just outside of Asheville. It was a great tour. I'm not a huge pale ale or IPA guy, but I still liked trying a lot of their different beers. And they do have quite a wide variety. And the tour itself is pretty amazing, so I do recommend it. It's the Helles, the Edelstoff. I like to do the short sniffs and then the longer sniffs. Not a whole lot of difference. Very similar. I'm thinking the Helles actually has a little bit more of a smell. I will admit, I sometimes feel like my sense of smell is one of the weakest senses that I have. I think the Helles smells a little bit more similar to what I would think of as an American lager, like a macro brewery. I'm not saying it's that bad, but it's closer to that than the Edelstoff. In other words, like I know there's no corn in either of these, but that's really unfair to say that. These aren't the best glasses for this either, because they don't really come to much of a point except at the very top. Still, I mean, just sort of like standard lager smell. I mean, let's face it, lagers are not really known for their complex aromas. A little bready. This one's just a teensy sharper, or that sort of like white wine smell that I mentioned in one of the previous reviews that I saw. Not as strong as the quad from La Trappe, but it's still that undertone of, it's just a little bit brighter. So the Edelstoff's a little bit smoother, I would say. All right, but let's go ahead and start getting into the glass a little bit. Wow, when you do the retronasal breathing out after you swallow, you get a lot more complexity out of the Helles than you do with just swallowing and breathing normally. When you do the retronasal, you get a lot more sort of like a crackery sort of flavor. If I don't do that, the flavor is much more muted. Just kind of smooth. But I also get more of a sensation of the carbonation when I do the retronasal. So a little bit more complexity, so I do recommend doing that when you drink it. Shut this off real quick. All right, let's try the Edelstoff now. Same thing, the retronasal really helps bring out the flavors. This is going to be a tough one. If you poured one randomly and asked me which one it was, I probably couldn't tell you. They are that similar. The Helles beer is 5.2%, and the Edelstoff is 5.6%, so 0.4% higher on the Edelstoff compared to the Helles. Excuse me. Now, I don't drink a lot of, never have really drank many American lagers. I mean, I've had some, but I don't typically drink them. Even when I was in college, I sort of avoided them. So, one of the lagers I do tend to like are usually from Germany. So I like Helles, and in particular, I'm not a big Pilsner fan, as I've said before. Bitterness is not something I seek. A decent complementary bitterness can be nice on a beer, but if it's like the main feature, I'm usually turned off pretty instantly. So definitely not the case on either of these. Very smooth, not a lot of bitterness. Very pleasant. I mean, just very good, drinkable. I will say they are tasting a little bit flat, which is giving them more of a syrupy kind of mouthfeel. There's more carbonation in the Edelstoff right now than in the Helles. Yeah, so for light beers, meaning like, just typical lagers, there does seem to be a little bit of, I don't want to say, they're not like overly oily, but there is sort of an oily character, where they don't a little bit thicker than just typical water, you know. So slight tinge of, if you can even call it bitterness on the end, but even there, I mean, very slight bitterness. It's almost just like a feeling of like when you drink a soda and the carbonation sort of has a little bit of an effect where it makes a little sharp feeling. It's almost just like that, where you can almost say it's not even the bitterness itself, it's like more of the effervescence. But as I said, there's not a whole lot of carbonation in this Helles. A little bit more, slightly more of the carbonation and the slight bitterness, a little bit more of it on the Edelstoff, I think. But nowhere near a Pilsner or anything like that. So it's still very smooth. And the size of your swig also does affect the experience a little bit. This is a very difficult choice. I actually don't know which one I prefer so far. That's interesting. This is also not my preferred way to enjoy either of these. I really don't like going back and forth and doing it so quickly either. I like to sit and just enjoy it. But I don't want this video to get too long. So, let me go this way first. So now I'm getting sort of crackery and a little bit of sourness. Not like strong sourness, but just a little hint of it. Am I just being fatigued in my taste buds? I can't even tell which one's sweeter. Yeah, I mean, they're so close. I really don't know. I guess I'm understanding why they're the same price. Because going into it, I would have thought the Edelstoff was the better of the two. And I was even told at my bottle shop that this one was the better of the two from their opinion. And yeah, this one seems to be like, people talk about the best lagers, they often point to this Helles. So, really, I mean, whichever one you can find, I think is a good buy. They are a little pricey, which is why I only bought this one as a single. They actually had a single can of this available, and I jumped on it because normally it's only in the 6-packs, and I really didn't want to spend the $20+ for the 6-pack, which I did originally when I tried this, and then the same like $20.50 or whatever I did for this 6-pack, just so I could do this comparison. That's why I got another bottle of that. For that price, I'll be honest, I typically won't buy either of them very often. I'd be more likely, even though it's a little bit more per fluid ounce, to buy a one-off than to buy 6 at a time. Because again, they're just not my favorite style of beer, although I do like a good lager. I certainly would rather drink one of these than like a standard American lager, or a Pilsner for that matter. But a little pricey. This is tough. I want to be real and give you my honest opinion, but right now it's that I barely can tell a difference. Maybe my palate's just not refined enough to notice the difference, but wow, they're so close. I'll admit, I'm wanting to say Edelstoff is a little bit better, but I'm also afraid that that has to do with the name. Because the name in German sort of, it's like precious material. And because I was told that, so I think I'm a little bit biased. I saw another review of these two beers where the guy basically said, look, you know, depending on the day, I might like one better than the other, and there's no like objective, oh, this is definitely better. And that's kind of how this is coming out for me. I mean, I have to pick a winner when I go to do my final scoring, because I keep track of these battles about which one I thought was better. Excuse me. This is really hard. Each sip almost seems to be slightly different in carbonation, in mouthfeel, in aftertaste. I think I like the Edelstoff just slightly more, but it's a hair's breadth, and it kind of changes from swig to swig. I don't know. That's really difficult. Yeah, I'm gonna give the slight lead to Edelstoff, but honestly, it's so close that for all intents and purposes, it really is a toss-up, and it's whichever one you happen to prefer. Anyway, that'll do it for this time. Hope you check out the next video.